Good evening. Crisis in the Indian automobile sector. We have our special focus on it right here on NDTV 24/7. I'm Siddharth Vinayak Patankar. After a steady decline over the past 18 months, India's automobile industry has been brought to its knees in more recent weeks. The data is alarming. The trends are troubling and the future is bleak for a sector that was once not only vibrant and hyperactive, but also had the world's attention. It still has that attention, but for all the wrong reasons. The crisis has cost close to 3.5 lakh jobs already, and potentially that number could eclipse 10 lakh jobs being axed, given the extent to which the automobile ecosystem employs people across India. As consolidated July sales numbers for the whole industry come in, it is now 9 months of straight losses. This is across all vehicle categories, and nearly 300 dealerships have closed down. Now, most dealers have a massive amount of inventory as well to deal with, and that figure is only going to balloon. Now, the reason that July has got everyone's attention, it's been a bit of a bloodbath. So, I'd like to quickly run through some data that's been shared by the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, or SIAM, earlier today. Overall sales, this is across all vehicle categories, have crashed nearly 31%. Cars and passenger vehicles are leading that decline, and you can see the big drag from them, close to 35% down in July year on year. Two-wheelers and commercial vehicles also down. There is no bright spot here, and even some of the specific segments, yes, of course I'm talking about scooters, but more so SUVs, nothing is really coming to the rescue of the industry right now. So is there a solution? The industry, and by that I mean the manufacturers, dealers, suppliers, well, they've all petitioned the government, and only last week a SIAM delegation met with the Finance Minister, Ms. Sitaraman, in Delhi. Not much seemed to have come out from that meeting, or so we thought, but now the Prime Minister has said that he believes both demand and the industry will bounce back strongly, those are his words, and that India has a large enough market and big enough policy space to ensure the growth of both internal combustion engines, that's ICE, or also vehicles which will be electric, or EVs, excuse me. Are these simply words of reassurance? Well, let's get straight into that. I have some special guests joining me, and first up I have from Mumbai, the president of SIAM, Rajan Wadhera, who of course is also from Mahindra, and with me right here in the studio is Amit Garg, who is the director at Shiva MotoCorp and represents several brands through your various dealerships across North India. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We'll have, of course, others coming in as well. But Rajan, let me come straight across to you first. I know we have been talking about this for a few days now, and it's never been as unpleasant a conversation as it has of late. I mean, the crisis, the slowdown, it started off people thinking it being cyclical. Is there finally a clear understanding across all stakeholders that this is something that has been unprecedented?
Yeah, I think there is no doubt on that, Sid, that we've never seen this kind of a drop in the last, several years, and it's across all the sectors.
Right. Is it something that we feel has bottomed out right now, going by the July numbers, or are we still to see the worst of this?
No, even the August is not going well, whatever footfalls and conversion that we have seen.
All right, and the reason I ask that is, of course, because when August comes around, the industry starts looking forward to the festive season. Last year, that didn't really bring any kind of relief or any happiness or joy to the industry. A lot was being made out of the fact that, one, you have a low base effect from last year, but more importantly, that, this is one year where finally a lot of that pent-up demand should get unleashed in this festive season. Your estimate as SIAM?
Well, we are expecting that September should be a good month because it has Navratras and also few more festivals in various parts of the country. So we are hopeful that September should go well and better than last September. We are just living on hope at the moment.
Is that something that I can expect you to say as well, Amit, the fact that everybody is living on hope. Is it
Siddharth-
false hope?
Siddharth, yes, that's true. We are living on hope that H2 should be better than H1. What we have seen, it should be much better than that, because festive season starts, then December sales and the March depreciation month. I think H2 is always better than H1. So we are living on hope. That's true.
Given last year's numbers, that's why some of that hope gets a little worrying. But I have to quickly ask you, the onset of the festive season is also when the inquiries start, the footfalls begin.
Yeah.
We start to see those little green shoots. Pardon the monsoon pun, but it's also when the monsoon starts to, really sort of bring its impact as well, positively, hopefully. Are you starting to see that?
Not yet, but this time all the festivals and like Diwali and Navratra all are in October month, starting from September end, from 28th onwards. So I think footfalls will be coming from next month or this month end. It will start. Due to monsoon, as it is, the walk-ins are very slow.
All right, fair enough, and that's a valid point, of course. Rajan, I have to come back to you and ask you, there's been a lot of talk about all the problems, the negative headlines, and of course, I guess you can blame media for some of that mayhem, but the truth is that in that last 18 months, while the last quarter has been the particularly worrying one, the fact that, this lack of interest from the buyer, the fact that people are slowly starting to get disenchanted to a certain extent, is it just the macroeconomic factors as you see it, or do you also bring in, the rise of some of these cab hailing services, the fact that a lot of people today maybe don't want to own a car especially?
Well, I think the effect of possibly not wanting to own a car may be not very big. Well, that's an element, but we do not attribute that to the falling sales, that too across all the segments. What you are saying can be true for, let's say, a PV or a UV vehicle, but then two-wheelers, three-wheelers, heavy commercial vehicle, light commercial vehicle, everywhere there is a degrowth. So that logic doesn't hold for all other segments of the automotive industry.
All right, fair one. Got that one out of the way. I can now go ahead and also welcome another guest who's joining us in from Chennai right now from their manufacturing operation headquarters. This is, of course, Venkatram Mamillapalle, who's coming in from Renault India's headquarters, the CEO and managing director for the company here in India. Venkat, thank you and welcome as well. Thanks for giving us your time today. Jumping straight into the discussion, let me get your views on not just the numbers that we've seen in July, but the current scenario. We've talked about how the numbers have been declining and of course some of the factors behind it. Specific to now what happens not just in the big cities but also tier 2, tier 3, the fact that credit, finance has disappeared, the NBFC crisis, your views on that and how it's affected Renault's business specifically.
Okay, good evening everyone, and thank you for having me with your panel. And today everyone knows the market is very tough and a declining trend, and this is not happening just recently, it is going on for a few months. And as I say this, it's not just the urban but even the rural markets are getting affected. We are feeling the pinch as we see our volumes also declining. And the festival season is starting from September, Onam in Kerala, and then moving to Dasara and Diwali, moving ahead in few months. We are getting prepared. As you all know that Renault India being innovative, we are launching new car which is called Triber, and we are very hopeful to have great volumes because of this new launch. But however, there is a glitch in the market where there is a typical customer resistance to walk into the showrooms and look at the cars and enhance the buying attitude. This is not just happening because of automotive market. It looks like it's overall industry issues, and we were expecting in fact from some support from the government during the budget session of revising the GST, but however it was not very positive for us.
Right.
But no doubts that we are seeing some amount of footfall, lack of footfall, But we are very hopeful moving forward. There should be some betterment in the footfall.
All right, fair enough. One of the things which, and there's 2 points, of course, that you made there that I do want to get into. Rajan, I want to first come to you. The mention about, looking to the government for certain kind of help or support. You were part of the delegation, of course, that's been meeting with the government. The SIAM has been making a very clear representation, as has FADA, the Dealers Association, as well as ACMA, the Component Industry Association. And of course, I get the message is clear that, look, something needs to be done. We need some sort of an incentive, and it's happened before. It happened, in 2014. It's happened before in 2009, 8-9. But is it just a GST cut that you would look for at this point? Is there something else that the government could do?
No, I think we had put 3 things very clearly to the government, and it was reiterated also by our parent ministry, Ministry of Heavy Industries, who were also there in the forum when we had discussed this with the Ministry of Finance. So first thing, we had said that we have precedent of 2008 and 2014, where we had this slowing of demand and 4% reduction in the taxes happened at that point in time. So we said now also we need a reduction, and we all had a consensus that we should get 28% to 18%, and that will drive the growth for us. Then we also said the availability and the affordability of finance, which was not there. For example, the rate cuts of RBI are not getting transmitted, at the end when it comes to the dealer for his funding or to a retail customer. And then the third thing we had talked of was a scrappage policy which could be incentivized, so that old polluting vehicles of, let's say, 15 to 20 years can be scrapped and new vehicles can be bought instead of that. So we had a 3-point agenda that we left with the Minister of Finance.
All right, well, we hope that there's movement on at least one of those 3, if not all 3. The scrappage policy, of course, has been a long-standing demand. This point about the other point,
definitely.
The other point, of course, that was being made by Venkat earlier was about new vehicles and how in this last period of slowdown, that's the one thing that seems to sort of spark the market a little bit. You get a new model in, and then people start to at least show some interest. However tough that may be too. Amit, do you agree? Does a new model, you've had certain experience in the past couple of quarters.
Yeah, I agree. Whenever the new model is coming in, any manufacturer is launching a new model, then the market pie is not increasing, rather it is decreasing. But
it's at the expense of something else.
It's at the expense of some other
but
manufacturer.
Does it at least bring you footfalls?
It too brings us footfall, but still
not enough.
Not enough.
All right, fair point again. Now, Venkat, I want to take us into the discussion about what happens from here, because obviously today that is what becomes most crucial to us, and not really to focus just on what's happened so far. Again, there are 2 broad areas I'd like to discuss. The first is what happens in terms of your own operations. So, Venkat, let me ask you that question. There's talk today about job losses. I think a big chunk of that is from the dealerships actually. Then of course, the next, that's about 2 lakh jobs that have been lost, we're told. About lakh and a half jobs also gone from the components industry's own infrastructure space, and then of course comes the manufacturing end for the OEMs, where about 15,000 jobs we're told are already gone. How much of a pressure is there when you're not utilizing full capacities? You have these big investments in the country. How do you keep that part of it going? What do you tell your global headquarters as well to justify that operation?
Okay, I will divide this into 2 sections. One is the domestic market. Yes, we are taking a hit. There is a slowdown. We all know that. We just spoke about it. But however, yes, when you come to the plant operations, fortunately we have exports. So that is able to balance to some extent the cost structure. And we are also doing a lot of component exports. And this is helping the supplier base in India. And to some extent, at this point of time, we are able to manage our cost structure, and we are trying to operate as lean as possible. Mm-hmm. We have not retrenched such idea. And on the coming back on the dealer side, yes, there's a lot of stress on the dealer side, on the liquidity crunch. They are not able to get loans for the inventories from the banks. It's not easy for them. But however, we have our own financing system where we are trying to extend as much support as possible. I cannot say how long we
All right. The point, of course, that was being made is exactly where I want to take this, and we'll, of course, try and get that link back up with Venkat. But Rajan, this point about the lack of finance, it's really hurting the industry. The NBFCs carried especially for two-wheelers, the NBFCs were really the sort of go-to when it came to any kind of financing. How difficult is it for some of your members to sustain that lack of liquidity?
Siddharth, that's one of the very big problems. The availability as well as the affordability of the finance is a very, very big issue, and we have briefed government to take immediate steps, and we have got a sort of a reassurance that government is going to do something about it, whereby finance availability, the liquidity will improve in the marketplace very soon.
So there's this one argument that's been made, and actually even by some of the people who are now, let's say, retired from the industry, that look, here's an industry that always sort of looks for government intervention and help, and yet tries to hold on to its margins. Why can't they just institute certain price cuts, get themselves through this problem instead of asking the government for a handout? I know it's an unfair question, but it's one I still have to ask you, not to defend, but to actually clarify what the industry's position on something like this is, because a short-term price cut like that could be detrimental long-term. Rajan, this is for you.
Well, for many sectors, let us look at motorcycles. Motorcycle degrowth is largely coming from rural distress. The rural growth is not there. It's due to economic parameters. Yeah. Many macroeconomic parameters are responsible for slowdown of, let's say, income in the hands of the farmer, and consequently the two-wheelers are not selling. Maybe three-wheelers are not selling because there's not enough load, because there's not enough consumer goods, and the other FMCG companies also don't have enough load for three-wheelers. Trucks, let us look at heavy commercial vehicle. In heavy commercial vehicle, we had this axle load norms about 8-9 months back, which added 25% capacity to the overall trucking industry. So suddenly there is no need to buy a new truck unless you want to replace your old truck. And again, there is a problem of availability of finance, and hence nobody wants to replace a current truck so soon. Let's look at the light commercial vehicles. Why are they not selling? Because there's not enough economic activity. So I think the fundamental problem will not improve just because we will reduce our price. I think there is not enough load available vis-a-vis the capacity of commercial vehicles that we have. So every segment has a problem. I think the panacea, if you ask me, is basically economy improvement. With that, I think that is the trigger. The economy has to start moving, and then I think every segment will move.
Oh, absolutely. And this is true of course, segments outside just this industry. We've talked about it with literally context of every other industry of late. The one other point which I think is crucial, and I probably feel strongly about this because we get a lot of feedback from people where you see that there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. Rajan, I'm going to ask you this in a second, but I want to get Amit's view, because on ground, when people come in, they talk to your executives, they're looking at new vehicle purchase options. Of course, they're looking for a good deal, but that confusion over BS6, diesel, if I buy a diesel car today, can I drive it tomorrow? If I buy a BS6 car today, can I physically drive it tomorrow with the BS6 fuel, BS4 car today, sorry, can I drive it with BS6 fuel? Is that hesitation also really sort of responsible for a lot of people just being confused and not buying?
Yes, Siddharth, it's a very big confusion in the market, in the consumer's mind. They ask our consultant whether you're right, what you said, BS4, I can drive this vehicle for 10 more years or 15 more years, what will be the guidelines? Then when will be the BS6 vehicle available? Yeah. And more of it, the walk-ins are very, very slow. Inquiries are very, very slow. And top of that, the customers who are buying, they are trying to get the best of discounts.
Squeeze
They are
that,
saying
yeah.
that as when BS3 was, BS4 came into picture, you gave a very big discount, very high discount on BS3 vehicle.
What about now?
So what about now?
Yeah.
So when do we buy the car? So before March we should buy the car. So they are waiting for the discount, and they're waiting for the very big deal, very good deal on BS4 vehicle. So the average cycle of inquiry of a customer to closing the deal was if 7 days before. Now it is 1 month.
Wow. Okay,
Because the
so
customer is
more than
looking actually for the
4
discount.
times.
And
they're willing
in
to
their
wait it
mind,
out.
it's playing that when the BS3 changed
Oh, they're
for to
expecting a
BS4,
bonanza.
a lot of discounts were there. So this time also they're going to be.
All right. All right. Rajan, now that's one point about the misinformation. The other thing we keep getting a lot of people asking about is electric vehicles, and whether the Supreme Court rule on diesel vehicles older than 10 years not being allowed in NCR, could that extend to the rest of the country? As SIAM and as individual manufacturers, is it important to now maybe actively starting to dispel some of this misinformation? Because it's not just about the good deals or the discounts, as Amit said, but sometimes people are just worried that, hey, if I buy something today, it will be defunct tomorrow.
Well, I think, Siddharth, that if at all it is true and there is a perception that can be clarified for cars and let's say UVs, but then all the other segments of the industry, whether it is commercial vehicles, light commercial vehicles, small commercial vehicles, three-wheelers, motorcycles, they're also not growing. So there is fundamentally a problem of sentiment, a problem of finance availability, which is leading to degrowth. Therefore, the misinformation around BS6 to some extent can be clarified, but we also have our members like Maruti who have launched BS6 products. Even they are not selling.
True.
All right, that's a fair point. So it's not just the confusion over BS6. We're almost out of time, but Rajan, I have to get your views on electric vehicles. I mean, that's the one big buzzword. I know there's more talk and very little action right now, but players like Mahindra and of course Maruti as well, and now even Hyundai, they're all talking about bringing cars. Some of them have already started to bring them. How credible is that, and how confused should the consumer be when it comes to EVs, or should that just be a conversation for a few years down the line?
I think it will be a conversation for a few years down the line. There is no way that in the next 2 to 3 years, the average consumer will be flooded with choices of affordable electric vehicles. To that extent, I think he should not be misinformed that electric vehicles are round the corner, cheap, affordable electric vehicles.
Which is a perception that exists, I have to say.
There is work to do in that area.
And hybrids, do you think that could still work? I mean, even though I know there's no policy move towards hybrids.
I think it will be too expensive.
All right, so let's go with what's happening in the most immediate future. That is, of course, looking at the transition to BS6. And more importantly, whether or not the government will blink. Will there be a certain kind of infusion, whether it is in the form of a GST rate cut or some other incentives that are then brought to the industry's rescue? Because the current situation remains very dire. We are talking about potential job losses that will triple from the current levels. And of course, no real hope in sight. That was unfortunately the dour note on which we began. And we do end on that note, but it is still an ongoing story that we'll continue to track for you right here on NDTV 24/7. Thank you to my guests, Venkat in Chennai. I know we lost him, but Rajan, thank you very much for joining in from Mumbai, and Amit, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate your time. Have a good evening.